Wisconsin-Michigan, Wisconsin won big 77-63. But the story, Michigan basketball coach Juwan Howard taking a swipe at Wisconsin assistant Joe Krabbenhoft's face in a post-game handshake. It would set off a melee of sorts on both sides. Coach Greg Gard for Wisconsin stopped Howard in the handshake line, leading to the men exchanging words, being surrounded by players and coaches. Howard put the finger in Gard's face, grabbed Gard's sweater. After Gard stopped him, Krabbenhoft came in from the middle of the scrum. Howard then reached out and struck Krabbenhoft's face. A whole lot of ugliness here for two guys who are supposed to be leaders of men, representing their university and setting the right example for their players. Clearly misguided to not do that. Here's the coaches.
I didn't like the timeout being called, and I'll be totally honest with you. I thought it was, not necessary at that moment, especially being a large lead. And then for have a timeout to be called with 3 seconds or 4 seconds to go, I thought that was, what I felt wasn't fair to our guys.
He came up to me and pulled his max down and said, "I'll remember that." And he started pointing it at me and tapped me in the chest. And I said, "Hold on. Let me explain to you why I took the timeout." Maybe he doesn't know the rule. I wasn't going to put my players in that type of situation to have to break a press in 4 seconds. That's where it started, that he said, "I'll remember that, I'll remember that."
For someone to touch me, and I think that was very uncalled for him to touch me as we were verbalizing and communicating with one another. So that's what ended up happening, and that's what escalated it. Touching me unnecessary wasn't cause for that when we were talking. And at that point, I thought that was, time to protect myself.
All right, so here's a statement from Michigan AD Ward Manuel. He says, quote, "I'm aware of and watched the end of our men's basketball game. There's no excuse for any of our staff or student athletes to get into a physical altercation with others, regardless of instigating factors. I reached out and apologized to Chris McIntosh and President Coleman, and has reached out to UW Chancellor Blank to apologize for the total unacceptable behavior. We will review the situation more thoroughly and work with the Big Ten Conference as they determine their disciplinary actions, and will determine if any further disciplinary actions are needed," end quote. So how this went down in the Cornette household yesterday, we were on radio, which you can hear us every Sunday on ESPN radio, and we were watching the end of this game with very, very closely because Jordan had maybe a bet out there.
Had some action on it.
Had some action on it.
Wisconsin covered.
And so we're on air as this is happening, and clearly we're reacting in real time. And it's almost like you knew there were going to be hands swinging. I don't want to say threw a punch because it doesn't look like anyone was throwing punches. Hands were being swung, right? And you knew this is kind of what was going to happen. But I know we've dissected this at every angle, so what do you make of it?
Well, look, whatever happened on the court, the handshake line is intended for whatever happened on the court, you put it aside, you exchange pleasantries, you keep it moving. Sometimes it doesn't go that way. I get it.
Yeah.
Coach Howard was upset about the timeout called by Gard when they're up 15 in the last 15 seconds. Gard probably felt like, hey, you're pressuring our squad. I wanted a fresh 10 seconds to get him across the timeline. Whatever, throw that away. What I do know is blow-bys happen with coaches at the end of games all the time. Mm-hmm. And Howard intended to blow by Gard, maybe say something slick, but keep it moving. It happens frequently. Mm-hmm. Where Greg Gard, the coach of Wisconsin, was wrong is he stopped Juwan Howard physically by grabbing him to explain himself. You don't get that moment there. The coach is upset. He's going to blow by you. It happens all the time. Let it happen. So that's where Greg Gard is at fault for initiating that by stopping, putting his hands on another coach and making this thing become something it never would have happened to get to. Does not excuse Juwan Howard. So from there, Juwan Howard exchanges, lets it get bigger than it needed to get, and then this thing starts to get away from him. Those two are going at each other. It may have looked like it could have stopped at that point if the assistant coaches on both sides did their part. Where Wisconsin is also at fault, Joe Krabbenhoft, the assistant for Wisconsin, his job, his role, diffuse the situation. Protect your players' safety. Get your coach out of an ugly situation, and let's move this thing away. Joe Krabbenhoft came in and poured gasoline on the fire. By getting in there, trying to talk tough, Juwan Howard felt like, okay, now another side of me is going to come out. That should never. And then Juwan Howard did something you can never do as a coach. Put his hands on another guy's face. He's supposed to be in that moment a guy that goes, hey, this has gone way too far. I now need to get my guys off the floor as well. Both coaches failed their players. Both coaches acted irresponsibly. But the chief irresponsible behavior clearly goes to Juwan Howard. Look at the optics. You cannot do that. But to think this is Juwan Howard and only Juwan Howard is irresponsible. Greg Gard was at fault for putting his hands on him initially and stopping what was just a blow-by. Juwan Howard was wholly out of line for doing what he did and putting his hands on the face of an assistant. But Joe Krabbenhoft, his name should be thrown in this as well. He came in there and incited way more of this poor behavior when all he was supposed to do is, let me grab my guys, let me get them out of here. Everybody's at fault. I saw no leadership on either side, and both programs, both coaches should be ashamed of what happened on that floor yesterday. Rather than this be about Wisconsin playing great down the stretch in the second half, it's about two coaches acting like children.
Okay.
That's what this is about.
I agree with you. Yeah, when you take a step back after you dissect it and look at this video over and over again, we're talking about someone being upset over a timeout. It's absolutely ridiculous. In my opinion, these are grown-ups and they need to act as such. The question now becomes what happens? Who gets suspended for how long and why?
You suspend Juwan Howard through the regular season. And that is very painful for a Michigan team, and also where Coach Juwan Howard let down his group. They're fighting for a tournament bid. These last few games are against tournament teams. They have a chance to play their way into the NCAA tournament. They're going to have to do it without their coach if they handle this properly. Suspend Juwan Howard for the final 4 games of the regular season. Allow him to return for the Big Ten tournament. Allow him to play and coach in the NIT or the NCAA, whatever happens. As for Greg Gard, he should be suspended at least a game or 2 himself because he played a role in this. As for Joe Krabbenhoft, the assistant for Wisconsin, he too played a role in this. He should be suspended for a game or 2 as well. Who this costs the most is Michigan. They are fighting to make the NCAA tournament. Most likely they'll have to do it without their head coach, Juwan Howard, and that is despicable for a person who's supposed to be leading a program to put his team in that position. But every one of the people I mentioned should serve some type of suspension because there's clear culpability with amongst all 3. And if you really break down the video, I saw some other guys posturing on the Wisconsin staff, doing some stuff that it was childish and also has no place on his staff as well. They should seek a game suspension as well. There should be a lot of people that pay the price for this because there needs to be a statement made. We will not tolerate this in collegiate athletics.
Yeah, done. Over, turn the page, and send out the disciplinary action, and let's move forward because this whole thing was so embarrassing.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.